Hi, gang. This is a scary headline. Look at that. Look at that. Look at this graph. Oops, there we go. Sorry. Got to get my bearings. Holy shnikes. The S&P 500 fell 6% on Friday, bringing its losses for the week to 9.1%. Stocks hadn't fallen this far, this fast since the early days of the coronavirus pandemic. It was the steepest weekly decline since March of 2020. And my poll question today asks, will these tariffs ultimately be good or bad for the United States? I anticipate, and I saw Mark Wallam's comment here. I haven't looked at the results today. I haven't voted yet today. I anticipate that it will be a very lopsided result. I struggled to come up with a question as to what wouldn't be a lopsided result relative to the tariffs. More on that in a moment. The tournament winding down. Only 4 teams remain. 2 big games tonight. 6:09, Florida versus Auburn, and then 8:49. I love those start times. Houston versus Duke. Winners of both games advancing to the championship on Monday night. The BetParx Sportsbook and online casino app and the Play Gun Lake app, they've got you covered. So much fun when you've got some skin in the game. By the way, far more to wager than just whether your team wins. Futures bets, $25 on Duke pays $21.75. Obviously, they're the favorite. At the other end of the extreme is Auburn. 25 on Auburn pays $112.50. So there you go. Whether your team wins or not, there's always another way to win on the BetParx online casino and sportsbook app. The only app that I ever use and recommend. Play Gun Lake as well for my friends in Michigan. Live dealers plus blackjack, craps, roulette, hot online slots like Cash Eruption, 88 Fortunes, Cleopatra. New users get up to $1,000 casino bonus back. Remember, that casino bonus has to be wagered if you're down in the first 24 hours. Go to betparx.com or playgunlake.com. Download the app right now. Enjoy all the action and excitement from the casino at your fingertips. You got to be 21 and in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or Maryland for BetParx, 21 and in Michigan for Play Gun Lake. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Enjoy all the action tonight. So, poll question today at Smerconish.com. In the end, will the tariffs ultimately be good or bad for the United States? I anticipate that the result will be bad for the United States, and that's how the voting will be. But I needed to ask that question today. I just don't think it's a day that I can establish parity. I've got a great guest on CNN to discuss this in Peter Navarro. Peter Navarro is, the key person on tariff policy for the U.S. And among the questions that I want to ask him, I want to ask him, did they anticipate this? I mean, in their worst projections, did they anticipate that might be the short-term result? And a follow-up needs to be, how bad must it get? If the market lost nearly 10% in value this week, how low must it go before you change your plan? So I want to ask that. I have the late, great Jack Bogle on the brain because Bogle, the legendary founder of Vanguard, was somewhat of a friend, a professional friend for sure. Loved having him on the program. I remember so well when I took a CNN camera crew with me to Bogle's office and interviewed him there and just, looked around at the ephemera, the memorabilia that he had in his office and let him talk about his approach to business, his approach to life, and the things that mattered to him most. I remember as well hosting him for live book club events. Remember the book that he wrote, Enough? That was a great one. But Bogle, was famous for saying, don't look at those statements. Don't get hung up on the ebbs and flows of the stock market. Look at the statement when you retire and you'll be pleasantly surprised, right? And by the way, yesterday I listened to a podcast because I wanted to refresh my recollection about Wharton professor emeritus Jeremy Siegel, who wrote a book years ago that's been reissued many times over called Stocks for the Long Run. Tons and tons of data saying you're best protected in the market as compared to any other investment platform. It's the stock market. Very Bogle-like, very Warren Buffett-like. Okay, but what if it's your turn now to retire? You know, you followed the Bogle advice, you've stayed the course. Maybe you were in a total market index fund, which is what Bogle recommended. You own a piece of the entire market. And now it's time to retire. And this is what you're dealing with. Like, what does the White House, what do they say to those people? And then something else that's on the brain relative to my conversation. By the way, who knows what I'll ask? Who knows what I'll get to? Because I have notes, but once the interview starts, you know, there's just no telling where it goes. But something else that I have on the brain is the telephone caller yesterday that said to me, I sell bikes in Florida, and the bikes come from Taiwan. Do you remember this call if you were listening yesterday? And he said, I've got 20 cartons of bikes, and I can't afford to bring them because there's a 43% tariff being imposed. I can't spend that. My margin is not that. And if I were to spend it, what am I going to do with that cost? I'm going to pass it on to the consumer. Well, the question that I would want to ask Peter Navarro or President Trump is, how realistic, if this is all about returning manufacturing to the United States, how realistic is it to think that someone is going to quickly fill that void and start manufacturing bicycles in the United States? And then something else that a number of you have suggested to me in your suggested poll questions or your comments, which I so thoroughly enjoy. But a number of you have said, are American workers, if we're at essentially full employment, are American workers ready to step into that mix? And by the way, is it really American workers or is it going to be American robots? So these are all the considerations and then some that I have on the brain about what a horrible, horrible week it has been. And you know, the thing is, this is not something brought on by a pandemic. This is not something brought on by unforeseen world events. This is something triggered by the American president. I toyed with asking as a poll question today whether it's all deliberate on the part of President Trump for whatever reason. And in the end, I didn't go in that direction. But you know that I think I've got this chronology correct. Someone tweeted that Trump is tanking the market deliberately. And then a Trump supporter responded and said, Trump is playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. And then Trump retweeted that with a video. But, you know, obviously Trump wanted the message out that he's playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. But in the process, the means by which he amplified that perspective gave rise to the critique that he's doing it all deliberately. Like, why would he have done that? Why would he have put that all in play? I don't know. If you saw the thumbnail for this conversation, you saw Shakespeare and Trump. And maybe you wondered, why Shakespeare and Trump? Here's the start of my commentary today, because it's on a related but different subject. Actually, here's a headline from the Washington Post this morning. Hundreds of law firms back Perkins Coie in fight against Trump sanctions. The focus of my commentary today is all about the concerted effort by President Trump and the White House to stifle dissent. Democrats are powerless. They don't have the votes. You know, the best they can do is Cory Booker on his feet for 25 hours. Amazing. I thought of Cory Booker last night at 2:20. So they can't do much, but there are other means of combating the president: law firms, academia, and the media. And I don't mean combat him in a partisan sense. I just mean try to impose some guardrails on him. the top of that list are the law firms. And Trump, by threat and executive order, is going after some of the biggest, most powerful law firms in the nation. And a number of them are capitulating, and they're coming to terms with Trump and making agreements to do millions and tens of millions of dollars of pro bono work that suit the agenda of the White House. And that level of capitulation, much like the capitulation you see at Columbia, much like a capitulation that you see at ABC in resolving that case against ABC because of what George Stephanopoulos said about the president. But I see it as all part of a pattern. But what I most want to discuss are the law firms. And the Washington Post lead story today is about how 500 law firms from across the country are coming to the defense of the law firms that are fighting back and not rolling over for Trump. More than 500 law firms on Friday denounced President Trump's campaign to punish individual firms, calling his actions abuses of power that endanger the rule of law. The firm said in a court filing, an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief, that Trump's orders are potentially devastating for any firm he targets and appear intended to intimidate others so that they do not challenge his administration. Now listen to this part. The filing was not signed by any of the 20 largest firms nationwide as measured by revenue. And then it goes on to give the history that I briefly described for you. Okay, so back to Shakespeare. I'm doing the weave, except unlike the other guy, I always bring it home. Here it comes. So my commentary today at CNN is going to begin this way. The first thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers. I'm Michael Smerconish in Philadelphia. That was Shakespeare 435 years ago, but it may as well have been, I better get that straight, but it may as well have been Donald Trump in 2025. The line is often misunderstood. It's not a condemnation of lawyers, but an acknowledgement of their vital role. The character Dick the Butcher says it. He wanted to overthrow the government, and lawyers are obstacles because they represent the rule of law. In other words, lawyers are the backbone of a stable society. And then I'm going to give some data as to the low regard with which we all hold the law profession until we need a lawyer. And then I'm going to say, no doubt President Trump respects lawyers, but not just Roy Cohn. Trouble is, he respects them in the same way Dick the Butcher does. Why else would he put the profession at the top of the list of those he is seeking to stifle? And then I'm going to give you the whole background of what's going on with the bar, academia, the media, and then the way that I intend to bring it home. Closing graph of the opening commentary as I've written it. And by the way, I get ready because I'm gonna poll you all on this. I'm gonna say this, and as Hamlet said, the readiness is all, which brings us back to Shakespeare and let's kill all the lawyers. Of course, the bard wasn't the only wordsmith to comment on the bar. The bard wasn't the only wordsmith to comment on the bar and to offer words that resonate today. The late, great Warren Zevon put it more aptly. Bring lawyers, guns, and money. You remember the rest of the lyric, right? And that's how I'm going to close the commentary. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Connie. I hope I can say it correctly. Gang, here's my question, thumbs up or thumbs down on the following. The late, great Warren Zevon put it more simply. Bring lawyers, guns, and money. The blank has hit the fan. Am I saying the word? Yay or nay? You know what the word is. I don't want to say it here and tank my YouTube standing. Do I say it or not for emphasis? Yeah, Sean Nichols, you say yeah. Hamilton White, Robert Eaton, Novak, Robert Britchko, Jamal, Christopher. Now you're going too fast. Okay, everybody wants me to say it. Well, Sean, good question. Would they allow? Sean, if I ask, then, oh, who said no? Mr. Super or something. Nancy Lawrence says no. Look at you guys. I'm just looking for the no's. Jim Greiner says no. Say blank. McCarran 11. John Sabine. When those of you who are saying no, why? Is it in poor taste? Are you prudish? I'm not being negative. I'm just kind of curious. It loses its sting if I don't say it. Don't you think? The late, great Warren Zevon put it more simply. Bring lawyers, guns, and money. Boom. Easier to ask for forgiveness. Oh, you think it's silly, Jim? Jim Greiner says he thinks it's silly. Okay. I don't think so. Jim, I don't think it's silly. I mean, is it silly for me to open up with Shakespeare? You know, I'm an artist here. I'm a poet. I'm making a commentary. I don't want to just deliver the rigid, strict, Ron Burgundy commentary. I want to have a little fun. I want to have a little. You think it cheapens the commentary, Nancy? Does Shakespeare cheapen my commentary? All right. Well, listen, that's what we call a radio tease. Now you have to tune in and see how the commentary ends, and then I'll talk about it on Monday on radio. Okay. Derek, how many will not know the reference? Derek, I can't play for a sixth grade common denominator. I can't. I mean, I loved Warren Zevon. Left us too soon. Werewolves of London, Lawyers, Guns, and Money. So many other great, great songs. All right, I got to get back to work. I thank you. Like and subscribe, and set yourself up for notifications. Should be a great show today. So please watch. See you soon.